The polished mahogany reflected the sterile lights above, a stark contrast to the familiar worn oak of my office. 30 years I'd given Garrison Dynamics. 30 years of my life, my expertise. Across the table, Mr. Sterling of Apex Aerospace watched me, his eyes betraying nothing. I slid a single encrypted data drive towards him. Garrison's new CEO called me obsolete, I said, my voice steady. He said my 30-year legacy was irrelevant. Sterling picked up the drive. "And what's this?" I leaned forward, a cold smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. "That," I said, "is their legacy. In flames. It starts with Project Nightingale, their flagship program. It's a house of cards, and this tells you exactly where to push." Sterling slid the drive back a fraction of an inch. "A bold claim. Revenge is a powerful motivator, Mr. Vance, but it can cloud judgment." I didn't blink. "This isn't about emotion. It's about facts. I'm Arthur Vance. For 30 years, I was Garrison's senior quality assurance engineer. I wrote the book on their testing protocols because they didn't have one when I started. I know every shortcut they took on Nightingale, every compromised alloy they used in the turbine blades to save a few dollars." I leaned back, my chair groaning softly in the silent room. The new CEO, a kid named Peterson, saw my salary and my pension. He didn't see the man holding the dam together, he saw an expense. Now, he's about to find out what happens when the dam breaks. A slow, predatory smile spread across Sterling's face. He finally pocketed the drive. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice now laced with a chilling enthusiasm. "Tell me more about those turbine blades." "The turbine blades," I began, my voice a low hum in the quiet office, "were supposed to be Garrison's masterpiece. A titanium-rhenium composite, unbelievably strong, unbelievably expensive. My team spent 2 years perfecting the forging process for them." I leaned back, the memory as fresh as the termination letter in my pocket. Then Peterson arrived. He walked through the facility like he'd bought a used car, kicking the tires and looking for rust. His mantra was, "Disruptive efficiency," which is just corporate speak for cheap. The scene played out in my mind. The sterile conference room, Peterson at the head of the table, flanked by his MBA acolytes who nodded at his every word. He projected a new materials manifest on the screen. The titanium-rhenium was gone, I told Sterling, my eyes fixed on a distant point beyond him, replaced by a nickel-based superalloy. It saved $37 million on the initial production run. I looked Sterling dead in the eye. I told him it wouldn't work, not for the performance specs Nightingale was promising. "The data on thermal creep is incomplete," I said to the entire room. "Under sustained thrust, at high altitude, this alloy will warp. It's not a matter of if, but when." Peterson had just smiled, that slick, empty smile that never reached his eyes. "Arthur," he'd said, his tone dripping with condescension, "we appreciate your traditionalist perspective, but our new models show an acceptable performance envelope. We can't let perfect be the enemy of profitable." He overruled me. He officially classified my follow-up report as legacy data and pushed the change through production. 3 months later, he called me into his office. It was a Friday afternoon. Classic. The HR representative looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Peterson didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. "Arthur, your position has been made redundant," he said, like he was reading a grocery list. "We're streamlining, bringing in new blood with a more forward-thinking approach." I just looked at him. "You're making a mistake, Peterson, not with me, with the company." He actually laughed, a short, barking sound. "The company will be fine. It'll be leaner." Then he delivered the line that sealed his fate. "Frankly, Arthur, your 30 years of experience looks like 30 years of liability on a balance sheet. We can't afford that kind of nostalgia." I paused, letting the bitter memory hang in the air between me and Sterling. He didn't fire an engineer. He fired the one man who knew the precise structural tolerances of every component in his flagship program. He did it to save money on the very project that will bankrupt him. I tapped the spot on the table where the drive had been. The data on that drive doesn't just show the weakness in the alloy. It shows my official, time-stamped warnings, and his direct, signed order to ignore them. It's not just an engineering failure. It's a documented, willful, chain-of-command negligence with his name at the very top. Sterling closed the laptop. The data from my drive had wiped the chilling smile from his face, replacing it with the focused intensity of a chess master who sees the board 5 moves ahead. He didn't speak for a full minute, the silence in the room amplifying the hum of the city outside. "The turbine data is the kill shot, Arthur," he finally said, his voice a low, precise instrument. "But you don't fire your silver bullet at the start of the hunt. A public reveal now would just create chaos. We need to control the chaos." He stood and walked to the window, gazing down at the traffic below. "Apex will begin acquiring Garrison stock. Quietly. Through shell corporations. Right now their share price is inflated by the hype around Nightingale. We need to bleed them first. Weaken them. Create a pattern of instability that makes our final move look less like corporate raiding and more like a mercy killing." He turned to face me, his eyes sharp. "That drive gives us the endgame. What I need from you now are the 1,000 cuts that come before it. What's the next point of failure? Not the catastrophic one, the one that makes the market nervous." I didn't have to think. "The avionics," I said. "The Gaiden 7 flight control system." Sterling's eyebrow twitched. "I thought that was a solid system." "The hardware is," I corrected. "The software is a sieve." Peterson's team outsourced the final integration to a third-party developer to shave another $12 million off the budget. They delivered a product that met the basic performance specs, but they cut every corner on cybersecurity. I leaned forward again, the architect of a slow-motion demolition. "There's a maintenance backdoor in the primary flight control software. A relic from the beta testing phase. It was supposed to be patched and removed before the Goldmaster was delivered to Garrison. It wasn't. I flagged it in my final audit before they streamlined my position. My report was classified as non-critical." Sterling's stillness was absolute. "What does this backdoor allow?" "Everything," I said, the word hanging in the air. "It bypasses the primary security handshakes. It's a ghost key. You can't take control of the aircraft, not directly. But you can access real-time telemetry. You can siphon test flight data. Or, more importantly, you can inject subtle, erroneous data packets." I let him connect the dots. "Imagine, during a high-profile demonstration flight for potential buyers, the Gaiden 7 system reports a minor, transient navigational error. A momentary sensor failure. Nothing that endangers the plane, but it gets logged. It gets noticed. The story isn't, Nightingale is a death trap. It's, Garrison's flagship has software bugs. It spooks investors. It triggers FAA scrutiny. It erodes confidence, 1 percentage point at a time." A slow, appreciative nod from Sterling. "It makes them look incompetent," he murmured. "Not fraudulent. Not yet." "It's the first crack in the dam," I affirmed, "and I know the exact port, the authentication string, and the line of code to exploit it." Sterling returned to the table and sat down, his demeanor all business. "We'll need to confirm this. We need our own people to see it. Can you get us into their live network?" A cold certainty settled over me. This was the final bridge to burn. "Peterson's IT team deactivated my user account," I said. "But they're new. They're arrogant. They were so busy cleaning house they never thought to change the core system administrator passwords, the ones I created 15 years ago." I met his gaze without flinching. "They didn't think an obsolete man was a threat." Sterling said nothing. He simply walked to a steel-gray cabinet, keyed in a code, and retrieved a sleek black laptop. He placed it on the table in front of me and opened it. The screen glowed to life, a blank login portal for a secure VPN. No company logo, no identifying marks. "This line is encrypted, untraceable. Sterling said, his voice flat. "Show me." I slid my chair forward. My reflection stared back from the dark screen, a man who looked tired, but whose eyes held a flicker of something long dormant. I placed my fingers on the keyboard. They felt steady. For 30 years, this digital architecture had been my domain. Peterson had evicted me from the building, but he hadn't changed the locks on the kingdom I built. My fingers moved with an economy of motion, a muscle memory that time and bitterness hadn't eroded. The password was a string of characters only I would remember. The serial number of the first turbine prototype I ever signed off on, combined with my daughter's birthday. Nostalgia, as Peterson had called it. My greatest liability. The screen flickered. Access granted. I navigated through layers of directories, my digital fingerprints invisible. I bypassed the shiny new user interface Peterson's team had slapped on top, diving into the core command line. It was like walking through a house you built yourself, in the dark. You know where every floorboard creaks. I didn't go for the Guidon 7 back door. Not yet. That was for later. I went for something more personal. I pulled up the internal HR server archives. I searched for my own name. There it was. Vance, Arthur. Termination. Justification. Redundancy. Strategic realignment. Beside it was a linked file, a confidential memo from Peterson to the new head of IT, dated 1 week after my dismissal. The subject line was Legacy System Purge. I opened it. "Sterling," I said, my voice low. I turned the laptop so he could see. He leaned in, his eyes scanning the text. Peterson's words glowed on the screen. Asterisk. Focus resources on front-facing security. A full audit of legacy admin credentials and back-end protocols is a low-priority resource drain. The old guard is gone. Their keys are useless. Sterling read the line twice. A slow exhale was his only reply. He looked up from the screen, not at the memo, but at me. The last trace of skepticism was gone from his face, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged certainty. He now understood that he hadn't just hired a source. He had acquired an architect. "Get your team ready," I told him, closing the laptop. "The next Nightingale demonstration flight is in 2 weeks. It's for the European consortium. Let's give them a show." Sterling nodded slowly, his eyes already distant, calculating the fallout. "Make them nervous, Arthur, just nervous enough." The room Apex provided was anonymous and cold, smelling of new carpet and filtered air. It was a concrete box somewhere in downtown Wichita, windowless and soundproofed. For 2 weeks it had been my world. My only connection to the outside was through a fiber optic cable, and the multiple monitors arranged before me like an altar. Sterling sat in a chair behind me, a silent observer. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough. He was the investor. I was the instrument. On the main screen, a live feed showed the Garrison Dynamics airfield. It was a beautiful, clear day. A crowd of executives in expensive suits, the European consortium, milled around a hospitality tent. In the center of the tarmac, gleaming under the Kansas sun, was the Nightingale prototype. Peterson was on camera, microphone in hand, his face radiating a smug confidence that turned my stomach. A testament to next-generation engineering and streamlined production, he was saying. Nightingale isn't just an aircraft, it's the future of aerospace dominance. I ignored his voice. My focus was on the smaller screen to my right, the black terminal window. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I had rehearsed this 100 times, mapping the network pathways in my sleep. "They're beginning engine startup," Sterling said, his voice calm. I didn't reply. I was already moving. My old admin credentials, Vance.A_legacy, slid past their polished new security like a ghost through a wall. Peterson's memo had been a death warrant, just not for me. His arrogance was my key. I navigated the familiar architecture, bypassing the clumsy firewalls his new team had erected. It was like they'd put a chain lock on a bank vault door I had the master combination to. I found the maintenance back door in the Guidon 7 flight control software. It was exactly where I'd left it, an unsigned, forgotten line of code. My own private entrance. I pulled up a real-time telemetry stream from the aircraft. Altitude, airspeed, engine temperature, navigational coordinates. It all flowed across my screen, a river of pure data. On the live feed, Nightingale began its taxi to the runway. The camera zoomed in on the cockpit, then panned across the sleek, composite wings. The consortium members applauded politely. "He's about to make his high-speed pass," Sterling noted. "That's the money shot." That was my cue. I had prepared the data packet days ago. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't a command. It was a lie. A tiny, elegant lie, just a few bytes long. It was designed to mimic a momentary data dropout from a GPS satellite, rerouting the navigational system to its internal gyroscopes for a fraction of a second before correcting itself. It wouldn't endanger the aircraft. It would simply create a flicker of doubt. Nightingale's engines screamed as it thundered down the runway and climbed into the sky, a magnificent, expensive falsehood. It banked gracefully, turning for its flyby. Peterson was narrating its perfection. My fingers typed the final command, times execute. On my telemetry screen, I saw it. For less than a second, the GPS coordinates wavered, replaced by the inertial navigation data, then snapped back. A phantom. A ghost. On the main screen, the camera was tight on the consortium representatives. One of them, a man with a stern, Teutonic face, leaned over to his colleague and pointed at a large monitor inside their tent, displaying the same telemetry. He frowned. His colleague's eyes widened slightly. The pilot's voice, filtered through the live feed's audio, was professionally calm, but laced with an unmistakable thread of confusion. "Control, Nightingale. We just saw a momentary nav system dropout, showing a 3-degree heading deviation before self-correcting. Systems are green now. Confirm you saw the same?" There was a pause. The ground controller's voice came back, a little too quickly. "Negative, Nightingale. Our board is clean. Must have been a transient sensor ghost on your end." A lie to cover a lie. They had no idea what they were seeing, but the Europeans did. They weren't listening to the controller. They were looking at their own raw data feed. I saw the German representative discreetly tap on his tablet. The whispers in the tent grew more audible. Peterson's confident narration faltered. He glanced over his shoulder at his own technical team, his smile tightening. "As you can see," he stammered, trying to recover, "the system's redundancy is flawless, instantly correcting even the most minor atmospheric interference." It was a clumsy save. He looked like a man trying to explain away a crack that had just appeared in his foundation. The damage was done. It wasn't a fatal blow. It was a hairline fracture. A seed of doubt planted in the most fertile ground possible. A multi-billion-dollar procurement deal. I broke the connection, ran a purge script that wiped the backdoor's logs, and closed the terminal. My work was finished. I leaned back, the tension draining out of me, replaced by a cold, quiet hum. Sterling was already on his phone, looking at a financial app. He didn't smile. He simply nodded, a gesture of profound satisfaction. "They're calling it a minor technical anomaly on the news wires," he said, turning the phone so I could see it. The headline was innocuous enough, but below it was the real story. The stock ticker for Garrison Dynamics, GAD, minus 4.5%. It wasn't a crash. It was a bleed. A controlled, deliberate wound. "They're spooked," Sterling said, pocketing his phone. "The consortium hasn't released a statement, which is a statement in itself. They're going to want to see the flight logs. They're going to demand a full diagnostic of the Guidon 7. Garrison is going to be chasing ghosts for weeks." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something that resembled respect in his eyes. "A perfectly executed cut, Arthur. They won't know where it came from, but they'll feel it, deep in the balance sheet. I stared at the blank screens. 30 years I had spent preventing failures like this. I had built my career on integrity, on the relentless pursuit of perfection. Peterson had called that nostalgia. He had called it a liability. He was about to learn that my true liability wasn't my experience, it was my memory. And I remembered everything. The news cycle moved on, but the stain remained. Garrison's stock stabilized at a lower plateau, like a patient whose fever had broken but was left permanently weakened. Sterling's shell companies had been busy in the dip, quietly accumulating shares. He called me back to the anonymous concrete box a month after the demonstration. The air was just as cold, but the atmosphere had changed. The hunt was on. "They're a wounded animal," Sterling began without preamble, gesturing to a chart on a large monitor. It showed Garrison's frantic activity over the past 4 weeks. They've brought in 3 different cybersecurity firms. They've grounded the Nightingale prototype twice for complete software overhauls. They've spent millions chasing the ghost you created. I nodded, feeling a grim satisfaction. They're searching the attic for a burglar when the foundations are rotten. It's exactly what Peterson would do. He can't comprehend a hardware problem because he personally signed off on it. A software bug is a faceless, blame-free anomaly. A flawed alloy is negligence. And now, Sterling said, his voice dropping, he's ready to double down, to prove the world wrong. He tapped a key, and a new document filled the screen. It was an internal Garrison flight schedule, leaked from a source his money had secured. Tomorrow, 0600 hours, a high-altitude endurance test. They're flying for the FAA, trying to get the plane's flight envelope certified to silence the critics. I leaned closer, my eyes scanning the flight parameters. A cold, electric thrill shot through me. It was perfect. Better than I could have planned. "This is it," I whispered. Sterling turned to me. "What is it?" "It's not just a test," I said, my voice barely above a murmur. I pointed to the screen. "Look at the profile. Sustained flight at 45,000 feet. A long burn at near maximum thrust. They're not just trying to certify the plane. They're trying to stress the avionics, to prove the glitch won't happen again under pressure." "And?" Sterling pressed. "And they're going to break their own engine," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "Peterson thinks he's proving the software is stable. What he's actually going to do is prove my 30-year-old legacy data on thermal creep was right all along." I stood up and began to pace, the pieces clicking into place with the terrible finality of a prophecy. The nickel-based superalloy in those turbine blades. It can handle the heat, but not for long, not at that altitude. With that level of sustained thrust, the air is too thin, the cooling less efficient. The metal will begin to stretch, to warp. Microfractures will form. I stopped and faced him. It won't be a catastrophic explosion. Not at first. It will be subtle. A vibration. The number 2 engine's internal sensors will pick it up. The pilots will get a cascade of amber warnings, turbine imbalance, rising exhaust temperature. Standard procedure will be to shut the engine down and divert. Sterling's eyes were locked on me, his mind clearly racing ahead, calculating the fallout. "An in-flight engine shutdown on a certification test," he said, the words tasting like victory. "The FAA will ground the entire program indefinitely. The stock won't just bleed. It will hemorrhage. Any remaining buyers will vanish overnight." "It's not sabotage, Sterling," I said, my voice hard. "It's physics. It's natural justice, delivered at 45,000 feet. I warned them. I put it in writing. My report specified these exact conditions as the alloy's failure point." I gestured back to the blank monitors where I had once commanded the ghost in their machine. "This time, I don't have to do a thing. I just have to sit here and watch. Peterson is so desperate to prove me wrong about a problem that doesn't exist, he's going to walk headfirst into the one that does. Sterling was silent for a long moment. He walked to the window, though there was nothing to see but a concrete wall. The predator was contemplating the kill. "When the news breaks," he said, turning back to me, "the story will be engine failure. We need to control the narrative that follows. We need to be the ones who reveal why it failed. That's when you use the data drive," I stated. "While Garrison is in chaos, reeling from the grounding, you leak my original report. My warnings. Peterson's signature overriding them. You don't present it as a corporate raider. You present it as a concerned industry leader, revealing a dangerous cover-up at a rival company." A slow, predatory smile finally returned to Sterling's face. It was the smile I remembered from our first meeting. "They won't just look incompetent," he mused. "They'll look criminally negligent. The board will have no choice. They'll sacrifice Peterson to save the company, and in the ensuing panic our tender offer will look like a lifeline." He extended a hand. I took it. His grip was firm, cold. A pact sealed not in a boardroom but in a bunker. On the eve of the flight, the air in the concrete box was heavy with unspoken anticipation. The live feed was purely technical this time. No press, no Peterson. Just the sterile view from the control tower and a grid of telemetry data. Nightingale launched into the gray morning, a silver dart ascending towards its judgment. I ignored the majestic visuals. My eyes were locked on a small window displaying the raw data from Engine 2. Altitude, 45,000 feet. Thrust, 98%. Sustained. My predictions were now a flight plan. For 20 minutes the numbers held steady. Sterling watched me, not the screen, trying to read the outcome in my expression. Then, it began. A single digit flickered, the vibration sensor for the number 2 turbine. It climbed out of the green and into the amber. "There," I said, my voice quiet but sharp. Sterling leaned forward. The exhaust gas temperature began to climb in sympathy, a degree at a time. The metal was stretching. My legacy data was screaming from 45,000 feet. A new voice cut through the room's silence. The pilot, his tone strained but professional. "Control, Nightingale. We have an EGT overtemp on Engine 2 with a concurrent turbine imbalance warning, declaring a precautionary shutdown of Engine 2. Requesting vectors for immediate diversion to Wichita." The words hung in the air, a death sentence for the program. A news alert flashed on a secondary monitor. Below it, the Garrison Dynamics stock ticker appeared. It wasn't a bleed, it was a cliff. GAD, minus 18%, minus 25%, minus 33%. A freefall. Sterling let out a slow, controlled breath. He didn't look at the stock price. He looked at me. "He did it," he said, a note of sheer awe in his voice. "Peterson actually did it." I didn't feel joy. There was no elation in being right about a disaster. I just felt a profound, chilling quiet, a sense of order restored. Peterson had called my experience a liability. He'd thrown it away. Now, that liability was a smoking engine, a grounded fleet, and a company in ruins. It wasn't about the money on Sterling's screen. It was about the truth on mine. So, was I wrong to use everything I knew to help a competitor take over the company that fired me after 30 years? Or was it justified revenge? I want to hear your take in the comments.